everybody, I'm joined with Jose Shorty Torres, which is a real honor for me. I remember watching you come up. I remember how exciting you were. You were just gathering belts from one organization to another. I mean, even your Tapology page is just you like on a sofa covering belts, right?
The funny thing about that was I did a photo shoot with all 10 of my belts. The photographer took all these photos. We never used one of them. Now, out of nowhere, he's like, here, just put the belt on you. I was like, hey, man, can you take a selfie or something with me? And we ended up using that. So it's my own professional photo on my phone.
So you use the selfie?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So talk to me about the beginnings of your career, obviously UFC being the goal, and your progress towards the UFC. What was that about? So
for me was, I listened to my coach, Master Bob Shermer, Combat Do. I've been with him since I was 16, and then in the sport of martial arts since I was 4 with Shotokan Karate. And when I moved up, it was just like, hey, there's 2 rules. If you're doing education, stay in college, graduate first. And the second rule was automatically 20 amateur fights. I mean, we had veterans like Shoney Carter, Terry Martin, where they moved up a little too fast in their career, or just were confident in their abilities, but sometimes it's like, hey, you need to humble yourself a little bit first. Went too fast and slowly had that demise. Like, yeah, they had their highlights in their career, but you'll always have some type of highlight, but when you go too quick, sometimes it's going to end faster than you even started. So for me, I got, I believe, 19 to 20 fights. I won my first world championship. And my coach was like, well, you still have 6 more months till you graduate. How about you just do worlds one more time? I was like, I don't mind it, but what if I lose? You know, that was my ego coming in. And so I ended up going in there. I ended up dominating the second year, even though the talent grew more. There was more competitors, more countries. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm a 2-time world champ. No one's ever done it. That year, all the consecutive guys lost. And I was like, man, I'm the first ever doing it. I got signed to KHK with Sheikh Khalid bin Hamad Al Khalifa. Eventually, they eventually moved into Brave, but I got signed with KHK with Khabib Nurmagomedov, Islam Makhachev, Frankie Edgar, getting the role with those guys. And the funny thing is, a lot of people don't know, Khabib was the only reason I got signed to Titan FC. Lex McMahon was out there, the COO of Titan FC, and he's like, who the hell is this little guy rolling with Khabib? Like, Khabib couldn't take me down. And then I couldn't obviously take down Khabib, and we're messing around, having fun, given he weighed like 190 at the time. I weighed like 140. This is after one of his surgeries, which is funny because I kicked his bad knee, and then he beat the crap out of me. Good times. But don't ever get top crucifixed by Khabib. It's not fun at all. Like, anytime I see him, like when he fought Barboza, I was like, oh, I remember that. I remember it. It's really bad. But signed to Titan FC, and I wanted to take it one fight at a time. Won my first fight against a pro debut guy as well. Second fight, the guy had 16 pro fights. I was 1-0, so I said, sure. I saw the film. I was confident in my ability. The only reason the state allowed it was because my amateur resume. No one usually has a 25-1 record, mainly with 25 wins straight. And it wasn't just MMA, but also I did kickboxing, I did Muay Thai tournaments, I had multiple belts. Then I went in there, dominated that guy. I ended up getting the chance to fight for the vacant title when Tim Elliott bumped up to the Ultimate Fighter, won it, was fighting Demetrius Johnson. I ended up knocking out a guy who was 7-2 in the second round. So I was like, oh my God, I'm a champion. This is awesome. Now I'm on the main card, so I get fighting night bonuses, stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to be an exciting fighter. But then I'm like, all right, cool. What's next? My favorite fighter is Manny Pacquiao. Let me try to do something that's different. Let me try to do something that's spectacular. Well, I go, even when he's lost, people love his fights because he's just an entertaining fighter. He gives it his all. So when people were telling me who should you fight next, well, you're only 3-0 with a world championship. What are you going to do? Are you going to fight just some guy coming up that's around 7-2 or around your record, or are you going to fight the #1 contender? Me, I believe in boxing. I believe in the whole you should fight whoever's next. And the next in line was 18-2, Pedro Nobre, UFC vet. He went the distance with Tim Elliott, who went the distance with DJ. And so I was like, you know what? Let me put on a show. I think this is something the UFC wants. I ended up knocking him out in 86 seconds. Nothing that never ever happened to him before. He's never been KO'd. So I was like, I'm going to the UFC. There's no way I shouldn't. I just knocked out a UFC vet. That's usually kind of the up-and-comers, mindset. But then the UFC calls and go, hey, we wanted to see you come back from adversity, so you got to fight again. It's like, okay, well, there's no real person that's worth it. I just fought a guy 18-2. Everyone was kind of below that. So
we need to find something.
Yeah, let's find something. Let's find something entertaining. Well, they had the bantamweight tournament. Farkhad Sharipov won. He was 17-7, beat UFC and Bellator vets. And I go, you know what? Let me bump up, see where it goes. I ended up fighting him. Got dropped in the first round. Tried to retaliate. Broke my hand. Got stuck in the guillotine and tore my MCL when I fell. So I'm at a huge handicap after the first round. But because of that, my adrenaline just skyrocketed, and I pushed for 4 more rounds and dominated the fight. And became the first ever 2-weight champion simultaneous for Titan FC. I was like, I'm doing something the sport has never done before. And I started to compare myself to Conor McGregor stat-wise. I go, Conor McGregor did this to Cage Warriors at 14-2. I did it at 5-0, and I defended the belt in the process. That's something that Conor McGregor sadly belittled on, is he hasn't defended a belt ever in Cage Warriors or the UFC. So I'm like, I'm doing something different. And I was like, all right, where's the UFC? The only problem was, because I was injured, I had my broken hand, torn MCL, Mick Maynard, the UFC matchmaker, called me 4 or 5 times, whether to fight Tim Elliott last minute, whether to be on the Contender Series. And the bad thing was, I go, hey, this is July. I'm not going to be able to be cleared, at least a punch, until September. But for some reason, they're going to call me every single week, even though I'm telling them no, and when I'm cleared to fight. So there was always the short end of the stick, or short end of the straw. It's like, sorry, man.
The shorty end.
Yeah, the shorty end, pretty much, which is always bad for me. So it's like, you either take the fight or you don't.
Yeah.
And so I believe there was 4 or 5 calls that summer. Then I was fighting Gleason, who was 7-2 at the time. And I was going to defend my 35-pound championship. Usually people who bump up never try to defend. They're like, all right, cool, won it, later.
Yep.
But I was like, you know what? I'm a champ. Let me be respectable and be dominant. I mean, not just be a champion. I believe you're a true, again, if you win the belt, you're a champion. But to be a true champ, I believe you have to defend it at least once. I believe Holly Holm has actually said that as well, too. So I was like, you know what? Let me go back up. Let me fight Gleason. And this guy, if anyone watches Dragon Ball Z, he looked like Majin Buu. He had the perfect body, just one of those guys that was you can push me and I would fall. That's how strong he was. And it took me 4 rounds to finally get him down on the ground, choke him out, and I won. I was like, cool. I have to be going to the UFC. I came back from adversity. This is the fight you want to see. UFC is like, no. It's like, you called me 5 times in the summer. What am I doing wrong? I'm winning, so I know that's what you want. I know you want entertaining fighters, mainly the way the flyweight division was going with Demetrius Johnson not being the most entertaining, if people want to say. So I was like, well, what else I have to do? So I kept on going back and forth. I decided to go back down to 25, defend that belt, and I was just going to keep on going until something happened. I denied calls from other promotions, because growing up, you think UFC. That's the only promotion you really think of when it comes to making it to the NFL, MLB, Major League Soccer, or over there on the European side, just different organizations. So it's like, this is the Premier League. I want to be here. And for me, I finally received one last-minute call. Well, I received a few, and then all these opponents backed out. They said no. I received the last-minute call to fight Jared Brooks. Jared said no. Alex Perez said no. I was like, okay, well, I guess my weight's going up and down because they're only giving me a 10 days or less notice. Right. One of them, I ended up getting injured. I was supposed to fight where Eli Garcia fought in Mexico looking for a fight, but I ended up injuring myself because I'd lose 17 pounds in, I believe, 7 days. And I'm a flyweight, so I'm like, this is not fun. Then I finally got another last-minute call, and I laughed because they go, you have 9 days to lose 26 pounds. You want to take this fight against Jared Brooks in Utica, New York? I go, no, I'm not doing it. I'm sick of these last-minute calls. My nutritionist calls me. He goes, what's your weight right now? He said, I weigh 151. What do you, send me a picture of how you look. He goes, dude, you're in shape. You're just fat. I was like, oh, shout out nutrition. But I was like, this is going to suck. He goes, just stay mentally strong. You'll be fine. And that foreshadowing that ends up being my demise eventually. I stayed mentally strong for the fight. I fought against Jared Brooks, not at all in training camp, and when I got there, it was like, oh, I made weight. Oh, damn, I got to fight. I completely forgot about that. Went in there, wasn't the best performance in the world, and then second round, I was able to reverse position where he sadly accidentally knocked himself out. Something I can't really control. And I took advantage of it, got the win, and walked off saying there's nothing I could really do. But I was ready for the next one, and my pride was really kicking in. And I was getting a lot of backlash from it. Oh, you won luckily. It was a lucky win. He did them to himself. I'm like, well, when you lose 26 pounds in 9 days, hey, man, I'll take whatever you can give me. Now I'm officially in the UFC. I'll take it. And then they go, hey, you're not going to fight until the end of the year, and this is around July. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to take a nice break then. If that's the case, I'm moved to the back of the bench. That's fine with me. Give everyone ahead of me their fair shot. And then they go, hey, we lied. This is after demolishing a great meal because I'm thinking I'm not going to fight until the end of the year. They go, here, you fight in 20 days against Alex Perez or you don't fight until next year. And I go, what happened to the end of the year? They go, well, this is your chance. You either fight now in August with your old teammates, TJ Dillashaw, Cub Swanson, or you fight next year. And that doesn't mean January, February, March. That means maybe December. I was like, oh, you're giving me this really, really messed up ultimatum. I guess I have no choice but to take this. So I ended up deciding to take the fight, and also prideful, you know, my pride came in where I want to redeem myself. I'm a true fighter. I'm a double weight class champ, double IMUF champ. Let's do it. California called me because I was fighting in Anaheim or Los Angeles, and they go, hey, we're not going to allow you to fight. We red flagged you because of your weight. You're cutting too much weight too fast, and California was really implementing the rehydration protocols, which is kudos to them. And I was like, well, talk to the UFC and see what happens. I was like, cool, I guess I'm not fighting. Awesome. Out of nowhere, they call me back the next day and go, cool, we talked to the UFC. You're still fighting. You're good. I was like, what happened to the health regimens? Like, what did they do to get me to still fight? And ended up getting to fight week, and mentally, I just didn't care. As you already know, as a fighter, you hire people to come in to help you, massage therapists, this, that. I brought probably about 4 or 5 people with me. I used none of them. I was like, you guys stay in your room, I'll stay in mine, that's it. I was a complete a-hole the whole week, and even after the fight, regardless of winning or losing, I had to apologize. Like, my coach from, you know, still little kids, like, you were really mean to everyone. And that's the weight cutting thing. But mentally, I broke down because I cut so much weight twice. I lost 54 pounds in 45 days to fight those 2 opponents. And as you already know, as a fighter, just any last-minute weight cut can hinder a performance. And not just your performance, but the mental side. And you know already as well as the sport's 80, hell, probably even 90% mental. You know, if I can't believe in myself going in there, then what am I going in there for? So I just didn't care. And you knew it was bad when Alex Perez comes to me after the fight and go, dude, you hit hard. You rocked me. Why didn't you push forward? And I'm just like, I didn't care, you know, which sucks. So I was like, all right, whatever. This happened. I had the 3-month suspension. I took 2 months to really focus on myself, yoga, just mental training, stuff like that. And I decided to come up with my YouTube series, Inside Team Shorty, where I'm more venting, but coming out with the behind the scenes, the reality and the truth about the sport, the truth about MMA, how to be a successful professional fighter, you know, coming up as an amateur, how to, is nervousness a good thing or bad thing in a fight, confidence is a good thing or bad thing, and this and that. And I wanted to talk about weight cutting and multiple things. And when DJ got traded for Ben Askren, I thought it was a great thing for the sport. I think that's awesome. DJ's finally going to get the respect he deserves. More small people in Asia, that's kind of like the highlight over there. And Ben Askren's the American that should be huge here. I go, you know what? I know I'm talking more on the mental side, but let me talk more on the news side, Ariel Helwani, what you're doing as well. So I was like, you know what? Let me try to change it up. I brought out a speculation video talking about the demise of the flyweight division. Well, and my biggest point was, when DJ denied to fight TJ, Dana White threatened him to cut the flyweight division. Not cut him, cut the entire flyweight division, which, you know, sucks. But you look at it, we don't have a Conor McGregor, we don't have a Colby Covington, we don't have a Big Mouth, so, or anyone really, really notable. Yeah, we have Joseph Benavidez, and he's popular, but he's never been a champion, so there's no real huge backup to it. So when DJ was finally traded, wait, we had the best champion in its history, and Dana White wanted to cut him then and cut the division then, but now he's gone. We don't have anything else. So I made the speculation. Next week, my manager calls Mick Maynard, and he goes, no, we're not cutting the flyweight division. The following week, my series, that specific episode, got highlighted by ESPN, MMA Junkie, BJPenn.com, and so many different news feeds for MMA. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm getting picked up. That's awesome. And they go, hey, no, actually, yeah, we are cutting the flyweight division. I highlighted it. And then 3 days later, they go, yeah, we're cutting you. I go, well, how about this? Let me either fight one more time at 135, and if I lose, cool, I lost 2 in a row. I think that's kind of the norm in the UFC. Then, sure, cut me. But half my wins are at bantamweight. Why can't I bump up? They go, and this is both Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby. They go, well, you lost your last fight horribly. You got demolished. And your first fight you won accidentally. So, no, we don't want you. And I was like, but why is everyone else getting a chance to go to 35 even after they lost? So sadly, because I boasted about it during the web series, and then I made it official that I was finally released, I'm going to take full publicity chances for it. And I posted it out there. It was a huge free agent, which was awesome. I had KSW, One, Ryzen, Brave, all these promotions call me, which eventually I moved to Brave. now people started losing, or their contracts ended, they started getting released. You know, Justin Scoggins, Brandon Moreno, he was commentating in Mexico. You know, it's like, that makes no sense, but you lost. Sorry, you're out. And Jared Brooks finished his contract. He was 2-2, took a last-minute fight, won in Texas, but no, we don't care about the favors you just handed us. You're out. And it's like, it's whatever the UFC wants. And so I ended up going to Brave. I won my debut, and the respect I'm getting from Brave is what I expected in the UFC. Again, a kid coming up, looking at the UFC as the biggest major league thing in MMA, but I wasn't being treated as a major leaguer. I was being treated as not even a minor leaguer, but a kid in college, a freshman in college, of like, you're new to the team, I don't care, you're new to the fraternity, you know, we're going to make you do dumb stuff, and then if we don't like you, sorry, you're out. I don't care what you did for us, but you're still out. And that was my demise in the UFC. And you look at Cejudo's win this weekend, that's awesome. I'm not a fan of the King of Cringe, I'm a fan of Cejudo, but he's not the flyweight savior, because there was 40 people in our division, which was already the smallest division besides heavyweight. Now there's only 12. And I feel bad because every guy is automatically ranked. It's like a false interpretation of how good you really are. I'm not saying they're not that good, but it's also saying that it's kind of given to you automatically. And sadly, all of Mick Maynard's our matchmaker specifically. If you got the chance to bump up, you're either a Texas guy, Mick Maynard's butt buddy, or something involved in Mick Maynard's little squad that it becomes more political than anything. It's not about being a fan entertaining fighter anymore. It's who you know, what you can do, and that can you sell tickets. You know, so it's the pros and cons. I mean, you look at Elias Theodore, 6-2 in the UFC. He loses one fight after a 3-fight winning streak, but he's cut because he had one bad performance or the fans didn't like him. That's not fair at all. You know, so that this UFC at least has become a little more political, and I think that's why other promotions are really, you know, boasting and getting themselves out there, because they're starting to show more respect or even paying more. I'm making more in Brave than I was in the UFC because I got signed under the basic contract, but Brave goes, we see your resume. No, you worked for this money. We're going to give you it, compared to the average guy who's coming in at 7-2 but never accomplished a belt, nevertheless too. And so it's a different thing, but and I'm pretty sure you know obviously some of the insides of it, where they probably pushed you to do a couple things you don't want to do, or force you, or giving you ultimatums, or cut you, or this or that. And it's like, why? I'm here to be a fighter. That's supposed to be my job. I know it's a lot more social media risen now, but it's one of those things that's it's not the sport it used to be. At least the UFC. I mean, hell, you even see champions. Dustin Poirier had to call out for an interim belt. Tony Ferguson is now not the interim champ, even though he's never lost it. What's that for? Colby Covington gets bypassed for a title shot, even though he was the interim champ. Why? Oh, they just want to make fan entertaining fights. CM Punk makes $500,000 in a debut, not just UFC debut, but a debut in MMA. But he gets $500,000, more than Cejudo made, winning the second belt because he's more popular. But Cejudo's the Triple C, if you want to call him that. That makes no sense, you know. So looking behind the scenes stuff, it is a lot of bad things, but I'm just really, really happy where I'm at, because it's a lot more stress-free than anything.
So what do you think was the most damaging to the flyweight division that kind of forced, because I mean, if we look back a few years, the lightweight division was shut down, and you look at the lightweight division now, and it's probably the most stacked division in the UFC. And there was a point where the UFC said, hey, it's time to bring the lightweight division back. So what was the most detrimental thing to the flyweight division? And at this point right now, with 12 guys on the roster, what can we do to save it?
I think the biggest thing, I don't know if there's really a chance to save it. I mean, UFC can do whatever they want. They can start hiring people back. They can just bring in new people, whatever they want. The only problem is, and I know they promoted it more, people are like, let's save the flyweight division. We're watching the fights a little more, but they've never been on anything more than UFC Fight Pass, you know, given now it's ESPN Plus. But you look at all of DJ's title fights. I believe only 3 out of 12. Yeah, I think my stats are right. Only 3 out of 12 are main events. Even his record-breaking title defenses were co-main events. Why is that? Oh, it's because he's not a fan entertaining fighter. Oh, people don't want to watch small people fight. But you look at boxing: Manny Pacquiao, Lomachenko, Guillermo Rigondeaux. I mean, you can name them. Why are they popular? It's not because the fighters aren't. It's because it's a 50-50 relationship. DJ did everything he needed to do. It's the UFC that didn't help them, and that's the hard part. I think the demise was DJ was too good, and it's it's, you know, it sucks for him because he is that great. Now he's in ONE FC making, I think he's making more money now than he's made in his entire UFC career, which is amazing. Like, good for, I believe he signed like a $10 million multi-fight deal. Like, he's only made $500,000 in, I think, his last fight in the UFC. So kudos to him. He's doing the right thing. And he goes, I've already accomplished everything I need to in the UFC. Why go back and win my belts again over a controversial loss? And I can just do more things and see if I am the best in the world. DJ was too good. You look at back in when Anderson Silva was so dominant, they were telling him to fight John Jones. They were telling him to fight George St. Pierre. Go up or go down. Do something different because he beat everyone in the division. He made that division look boring, even though he fought, you know, the likes of Vitor Belfort and so many more. Like, these guys are gruesome, but he beat them all, and he made them all look boring. So it's like, bump up or what? You're not entertaining anymore? So it's the fact of now it's being mixed up. So Hudo's in. He's, even though he really is the king of cringe, man, he's a dominant champ. You know, he beat Marlon Moraes that I thought he was going to lose. Or I was hoping he was going to lose, but he's now not just a wrestler. He's now officially, in my eyes, an MMA fighter, which I think is amazing. That's great for him because he catches on so freaking fast. But could he personally save it? Maybe a little. I just don't think so. It's not going to look good for the UFC to now hire 30-plus people back. You know, it's like, oh, we fired you. Okay, we're just kidding. Come on back. That doesn't make any sense to me. And the best guys in the division right now are cut and now moving on to different promotions. Some people need the money. I know Justin Scoggins went to Ryzen, lost. I'm pretty sure he would love to come back. But for me, people were asking me, what are you going to do after your Brave contract's up? Are you going to win 2 belts and go back? I mean, I could build my resume, maybe. But honestly, that's not my intention. The way they treated me then, why treat me better now when I, let's say, eventually get 2 more belts? Why? Because now I'm more popular? I don't like that. If you didn't help me from the beginning, why are you going to help me now? Oh, because I have money signs on me? I'm not a huge fan of that.
Do you think there's a benefit in the fact that, so say if the UFC do decide that they are going to completely close the flyweight division, then all the rest of the flyweights that are signed now are scattered amongst the other promotions. Is there a benefit in all these other promotions having high-level fighters like yourself, you know, to be able to then build them up as a promotion? Like, you're going to benefit Brave as much as Brave is benefiting you as an athlete. I mean, do you think that as, like, we'll be able to look back in a few years' time and go, like, it was important for the flyweights to kind of scatter around the world and build up their popularity before the UFC brought that division back?
I think it's a good thing because you look at the UFC, most of the time when they hire mainly flyweights, they're only fighting in their region. You know, if they're Brazilian, they're fighting primarily in Brazil. If they're American, America. If they're fighting, you know, Chinese, China, and just different countries, Europe. But it's the fact of KSW called, all these promotions called, and I knew the game plan for all of them. Usually, for example, let's just use KSW for example, a big growing promotion in Europe. Huge in Poland. I think Scott Askham, great, you know, shout out to him. He won the belt, awesome for him. He was cut and he's now in his prime. So there's that 50-50 where you want your better fighters to fight him and build a name off of him, compared to a lot of the flyweights like myself. We're young. You know, we're small guys for a reason. So coming up, it's going to be harder for their talented fighters to get up there. But if they beat us, we just beat a UFC guy. Now we can be better than the UFC. Like, that's naturally their perspective. Or they deserve to be in the UFC, like when I beat Pedro Nobre and Titans. So it's a 50-50. I think it's great for the promotion. I think it's great for the fighters, getting worldwide recognition. Again, I fought in Jordan my last fight. I was supposed to fight in the Philippines, but I had to postpone it. Now I might be fighting somewhere else in a different continent. So it's a huge thing. Hopefully an announcement coming soon. But it's a huge thing to know that I'm not just fighting in the States anymore, and I'm able to spread my popularity and spread my love, spread my MMA career in different countries and you know, grow a different fan base. Not just specifically Americans or even my nationality, Mexican, Puerto Ricans, you know, mix it up. And I think that's amazing. I think Brave just announced their London card, and people are calling me to go out there just to commentate or teach seminars. Like, that's something I'd love to do, and I think that's only because Brave and the IMUF. If I only fought in the U.S., no one in London's going to know me. But because I won the IMUF twice, people want to do what I have done. They want me there. They want me to teach them. So it's a nice little thing to get recognition all over the world, not just in the States. And I think actually this is, sorry everyone in the States, but I think everyone's more respectable and appreciate it more when you're in different countries, because they want to be like you. They want to make it to the States. We have a little bit of a stepping stool already, but they need that stepping stool. They want that pedestal. So to get any advice from an American that's already made it, it's huge. You know, and it doesn't mean, I think that's something that Brave does really well, is they're fighting in countries and even cities in these countries that aren't really known. I mean, you look at Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao's from the Philippines. No one from the Philippines was really a world champ, or at least a dominant world champ, until he came into the scene. Look at Triple G. He didn't make it. He didn't make his state's debut until he was 32, 33, and then he was knocking out everyone. Again, because these countries aren't known for fighters, doesn't mean they don't have talented people. It's just they need their own chance. I think Brave has given them that.
And something else, obviously, that you've highlighted as a path for young fighters is the IMAF tournament, and we've got the Raptors are heading out to Rome next week for the championships this year. Tell me a bit about IMAF, and first of all, how and why you decided to go down the IMAF route, and what you got out of that experience.
For me, it was 100% because of my coach. I didn't have the money, and I ended up doing like a GoFundMe page, and just the support I got from that was amazing, to see that people actually want me to succeed, that I was succeeding and not even really paying attention. I was just listening to my coach. But when I went to Worlds, I was nervous as hell. Like, it was funny, I fought Romania, my very first fight in 2014. My first strike was a groin shot. Like, I was so nervous. I went to throw an inside leg kick, and he moved a little bit, and it just went straight up.
I had the same problem. I got disqualified in Japan for the same thing.
And I was like, I'm nervous. I get it. And so, you know, won all the fights, 2 years, which it is gruesome because you're making weight every single day. You're fighting every single day. Both years, I actually thought I wasn't going to make it to the third fight because I got injured in the second fight. It is a hard thing. But for me, it was different. We want to be Olympians. Boxing has Olympics, but why doesn't MMA? Well, MMA is still fairly new. Boxing's been around for hundreds of years, and now it's really developed. That's why these fighters are making Canelo, $35 million in a fight, compared to Cerrone, $400,000. You know, even though Cerrone fights 12 times in a year, that guy's crazy. Even though he says he's scared before every fight, it's the different pay grade and how political it's gotten, and just how much they've adapted. It's years of experience. UFC and MMA in general is still kind of growing to that. But for me, the IMAF is, in a sense, our world championship. It is our Olympics. We're not there yet. The IMAF is trying to campaign to make an Olympic run, and it's been getting pushed back, sadly, but we're doing stuff for junior athletes. We're doing stuff for people who have this many fights. And now we have the veterans in the IMAF scene, and I think it's amazing that when I was there, it was just Worlds. It was your national tournament, you won, you fought in Worlds. Now there's your national tournament, you win, but now you can do all these different regional things and then fight at Worlds, which is so much more practice. Back in the day, obviously, when you first started, it's much different than when I first started. It's much different when these guys are starting. And I'm only 26, and it's like, last year I was commentating for them. You wear red or blue. You're in the red corner or blue corner, but you got some guys coming in gold rash guards. They were the champions in their respected regions, whether it was Europe, Asia, South Africa, Australia, and I'm like, I want a gold rash guard. I'm really upset. Like, I'm upset. Like, and every single guy, I think there was one fight they had 2 gold rash guards facing each other. I was like, I'm just mad because I want one. Like, I was the first ever 2 champ. Like, can I get my own specific shirt, something, maroon, anything? Magenta. So it's just one of those things that there's so much more experience for these guys. I mean, when I talked to Frank Edgar in Bahrain about this, he's like, dude, I had 2 amateur fights and I went pro. It's just like any job you're trying to do. Look at Ariel Helwani, how many small interviews eventually he did to where he's now at ESPN. It's like, it's a building process. You need to build your resume. Well, for me, that's what I did. By the time I turned pro, I didn't fight in the local scene. I immediately got signed to Titan FC, and in 3 fights, let's see, the guy was 0-0, 16 fights, so I believe the guy was 8-8, and then 7-2. I've already beat guys that had pretty much 20-plus wins already. You know, I think when I became a 2-time world champ at 5-0, I think the record was 63-19. You know, in a sense, the guys I've beaten, but I was only 5-0. That technically is not supposed to happen. But why that happened? Because the amateur ranks. I don't care, and this is my recommendation for any amateur. I don't care if you're 0-30 or 30-0. Get 20 or 30 plus fights as an amateur because that's your experience. If you're young, you have time. There's no reason to rush. And trust me, I've rushed a lot of things and I've gotten beat up for it. But if you're older and your time's running out, then yeah, you have to push it through. But you got to find that happy medium of, you're still practicing to, you're practicing your profession. You're practicing to be the best in the world. These amateur fights, it might not be the most, credential win sometimes, but it's different scenes. And sometimes you win so many championships, you go to the IMUF, you're fighting under a huge promotion. You're fighting under some big lights.
Yeah.
I went there and I was like, dude, their world championship final was bigger than my last two at the UFC Expo. I mean, the way Bahrain, KHK, Brave, and how they all set it up, it was, confetti's going down, and they do this huge scene. I think it's amazing. And I'm commentating, I was like, I'm just mad because I didn't get this. I'm a little jealous, but it's a huge thing, and I think the IMUF is easily they have my full support, and I know you have guys who are in it as well, and all these other people from all over the world. It is a huge thing, and I hope one day that the IMUF is the first person to lead it to the Olympics.
So as we were talking yesterday, we were discussing having a conversation, and you said let's trade interviews, and we got into a really interesting conversation about post-fighting careers and retirement and all these kind of things, and you were throwing a bunch of questions at me which have been bouncing around in my head since yesterday. So what I want to do is I want to pick up some of those questions now, and I'm going to kind of let you take over, and then we'll have a conversation based on the questions that you're asking me.
Cool. This is weird. So for people watching this, my YouTube series is called Inside Team Shorty, where I give the reality, the truth, and everything behind the scenes. Again, things obviously people not in the UFC don't know, and it's the fact of there's shady things, there's positive things, there's things in the middle. For me, in my series, I talk about fear, confidence, again, DJ being traded, what's going to happen. Hell, I got cut from one of my videos, that's how dark it gets sometimes. So for me, I know a little bit about you. I know you fought some of the greats in the sport, but I do know you retired early. And I believe a couple episodes back, I talked about Rose Namajunas. She had a fight where she lost Andrade, and immediately was like, I'm thinking about retirement. It's affecting my relationship, it's affecting my health, it's affecting this, that, and there's so many different reasons. But for people who don't know, like, what you've been through in the sport, why did you retire earlier in your career, where I believe again, from me looking on the outside, how old are you now?
I'm 37 now.
You're 37. That's usually 36, 35, 37 is when people usually retire. So why did you retire? How long has it been since you retired?
It's been almost 7 years since my last fight.
And for people who don't know, why did you make that decision?
Say fortunately. I wouldn't say fortunately, but it was easier for me because it wasn't a decision that I made. I was matched up to fight Matt Brown in California, and California requires a bunch of different testing that other people require, as you know. The EKG or ECG, as we call it in the UK, was something that they'd needed that I'd never had to do before. So when I went to do these tests, it flagged up an irregularity with my heart, and they basically said, look, we can still clear you to fight. This was 4 weeks before the fight. We can still clear you to fight, but we need to go into your heart and have a look around and see what's going on.
Yeah.
So 4 weeks out from a fight, first of all, I'm not letting someone have a look inside me. I've never been cut open to have any kind of surgeries and all that kind of stuff. So I pumped the brakes straight away. I gave my doctor at home a call, and I had this conversation, and he said, look, come back here, we'll do some more tests, we'll figure out what's going on. So I was effectively sidelined because I wasn't cleared to fight. They wouldn't allow me to fight. And then this process started of me doing the tests and trying to figure out what was going on. And it was less at that point, it was less about getting cleared to fight and more about, am I going to have a heart attack at any moment and not know it's coming? That was really more the interest, because, fighting's always going to come to an end at some point.
Yeah.
Life's going to come to an end, but I'd rather it, be later rather than sooner. So I kind of just pulled back a little bit, and I had a few months where I was battling back and forth and trying to get some answers and figure it out, and I was offered the opportunity to commentate, and I stepped over to commentary, and it just kind of took off, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. I look back and I go, wow, 6-7 years has passed since I fought last, and I never anticipated myself stepping into a commentary job, to be an analyst, to be doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, my thought was that I was going to fight until I couldn't fight anymore, and then go and do something else at the same time as coaching the fighters.
Teach, be a trainer, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The more typical thing.
That's it, yeah. The regular path.
Yeah.
And that was my plan. The reality is, I'd not ever discussed with myself or with anybody else the challenges around actually retiring, around making that decision to go, you know what, I think I'm done. And that was, it was because it was taken out of my hands, I suppose it was a bit easier, but then there's a frustration because it wasn't on my terms. So there's still a part of me that wants to get back in there, and you know what it's like. You've been training for fights before when your opponent's pulled out a few weeks before, and I always say it's like a storm in a bottle. Like as soon as you start preparing for a training camp, you're building that storm. And as soon as you can't, you put the storm in the bottle and you put the cork on and you just carry that around with you. And I've been carrying that storm for 7 years now. So I almost feel like I've got to try and find an outlet for it. So, I mean, the idea of fighting again is always in the back of my mind. And Conan, I was just chatting to him a little while ago, and Conan says he'll never retire because in his mind he's always going to be a fighter. And I think that's the same for me. I've realised, and there was a book that I read a long time ago, the Book of the Samurai, and it was talking about balance. You know, if you're a samurai, you need to be an expert at this, but you also need to be a musician and a poet and an intellectual, a philosopher, you know. And I never had balance when I was fighting. So I feel almost like I was diverted as a way of turning that mirror on myself and saying, hey, you need to find other balance. And now I've got another place to be in the sport. I can look back on fighting far more as a thing of enjoyment for me instead of I have to do this for my career. No. You know, and I would say that for anybody. And there are two benefits. One is giving myself something else to do after fighting that doesn't rely on me being a champion. Took a lot of pressure off me, which means that if I was to fight again, if I was to do a training camp, it would be enjoyable, more enjoyable at least, depending on who I'm training with.
Yeah.
It'd be more enjoyable. There'd be less pressure on winning. And at the same time, you know, taking that break, having that time to remove myself from competition but still be focused on the sport has allowed me to see the sport as a whole. So I've actually learned a lot in the time that I've had off. And, you know, I mean, as you said, you know, if you're a young fighter, you've got to get as much experience as you can. I never had an amateur career. I was fighting on a show called KSW, which was on a square matted area in a sports hall, and it was 1 5-minute round with no headshots.
No.
And as a striker, that's just no use to me. I mean, you know, finishing with low kicks is a very rare thing. So I never had an amateur career. So a lot of my lessons and experience were as a pro. And I feel like looking back now, if I was training fighters, I would allow them a bit of time to breathe and to relax and to say, hey, look, we're going to take 12 months off now. We're going to just watch fights. We're going to just watch the sport and just consume it like a fan, and then go back and approach it, you know, with new eyes. So I don't think there's anything wrong with fighters stepping away for a while and then going back. There's this pressure, I think, when you're a fighter that you've got to stay active, you've got to keep grinding, and you get into this like kind of like masochistic self-punishment cycle.
Yeah.
At least I did when I was fighting, where if I'm not suffering and I'm not grinding myself into the ground, that I'm not progressing. And I've actually progressed a lot more sitting on my sofa at home watching fights than I ever did when I was actually fighting.
It's a crazy thing because, again, you started at, you know, you didn't have an amateur career. You technically did pancration, and then you went straight to MMA, which is a huge different thing. And that's why, like, it'd be awesome, and I'm pretty sure you say the same, of I wish I had IMUF back in the day and different things, because it's experience. I know Frankie Edgar would tell me the same thing. But so you had years to really think about it, you know, because after my loss against Alex Perez, I took 107 shots to the head. And that was in 3 minutes and like 30 seconds. Didn't even know the fight lasted that long. And after the fight, I took 3 months off because I've never been TKO'd. And that's when I started my YouTube series, and I go, well, let me try to do something different just in case I turn into a Freddie Roach or Muhammad Ali, and out of nowhere I do have some type of brain damage and I have, you know, Parkinson's or this or that, because, you know, all these people were putting our lives on the line every single day. You know, whether we're breaking our bones or doing this, we're putting our brains, you know, in front of people, in front of hands, elbows, knees, kicks, all that stuff. So I'm trying to do what you're doing now. It just so happens that for you, you got really lucky to the point where people reached out to you to commentate. And the good thing is you had a voice. You know how to speak well. You're able to perform all these different things, and you're good under pressure compared to people who, and I'm pretty sure you know, are the typical jocks. They're great at the sport, but not really, you know, common sense smart. And then after they become personal trainers, but they're not making much is probably what they could. So, you know, for like somebody like myself, what do you recommend for me trying to come up when it comes to something like this?
Well, I would say it really depends on what drives your passion in the sport. For me, I'm a geek. I want to know the ins and outs of the sport. I want to understand it.
Which I've been watching your UFC like sports analyst stuff, and I was
Yeah.
like, this is pretty awesome because again, and it's something that I know you've seen again more watching on the couch, and that's actually something I really love about John Jones is that's all he does is watch film. He will break down the little nuances people do that you just won't realize until you watch it almost 100 times.
Yeah, I just started seeing the patterns throughout the sport, and when I was fighting, I would choose who I would watch because I felt like if I was watching the good fighters, I would get better, and if I was watching the guys lower down the card, I'd pick up bad habits and those kind of things. Whereas in actuality, I watch everything now, everything that's on Fight Pass, everything that's on Flow Grappling, that's on Box Nation. I'm just consuming combat sports all the time, and I see the good and the bad. I see the ebbs and the flows in people's games, and you know the psychological struggles that they go through as well. And to be able to sit on the outside, remove myself from it, and see two fighters, and I mean, like when I was fighting, I would look at, say, Carlos Condit. I'm fighting Carlos Condit, so I'd look at Condit and I'd go, yeah, he's a good striker, but I'm better. Oh, he hits really hard, but I'm going to knock him out, you know? And he's going to probably try and take me down, but my takedown offense is good enough to stop him. So although I'm trying to analyze, the thing that's standing right in front of me is my ego. And I struggled so much to get through the ego and to look at him and go, you know what? He's a dangerous striker, and I've got to be really on my game because that left hook that he's got is probably going to take my head off if I'm not careful. And I never had that conversation with myself going into that fight. So when I was able to remove myself entirely, and I'm now looking at Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald, or John Jones and Thiago Santos, and I'm looking at these guys, I'm not involved in that at all. So I can be very objective, I can be a fan, and that ultimately, I want to be a fan of the sport, and I want to be able to live and breathe the sport as a fan. So that's kind of how I mean, again, it's very much accidental, but I think everybody in the sport, there's something in particular that drives you, whether it's you want to be a master at a particular range, whether you want to be comfortable in that environment, whether you want to understand that space so you can build other fighters up or be a commentator. Or, I mean, and the other thing as well is officiating, you know, judges, referees, cut men. I just cut people. We've got women now as well. It's, I mean, a very diverse sport. I just feel like the sport has so many different avenues for fighters to move on to after they've fought. A lot of fighters just struggle to look past their next fight. I was the same, you know. My next fight's coming up. I'll return all the DVDs that I've borrowed. I'll return all the money that I've borrowed. I'll say
that's how old he is. DVDs.
I'll return all the videos that I've borrowed, all the cassette tapes. That's how old I am. Now, like for me, it was like that was the last moment in my life. So it was so difficult to go, well, one day I'm going to retire. One day I'm going to need to do something else to pay my bills. One day I'm going to want to do something else other than fight. It's difficult as a fighter, I think, to think to yourself that you're not going to succeed and you're not going to achieve everything you want to achieve, because ultimately, if you do, you don't necessarily have to worry about what you do after fighting. And I think fighters need to not only look at that as an opportunity to take pressure off themselves by diversifying their options, but also to recognise that MMA is, like you said earlier, it's a young sport, it's a growing sport, and we have so many people involved in MMA now that never did MMA. They never trained MMA. They don't even particularly like watching MMA. And I'm talking about judges as well here, as you know yourself. Like, we need fighters in those places. We need fighters in corners. We need fighters judging. We need fighters refereeing. We need people that have had experience in the sport. And I think that there's a place for everybody on the UFC roster right now. There's a place in the sport for them, or outside of the sport for them doing something else. And the work ethic that they've got from training and fighting, they can apply that to everything. It's just difficult to see it sometimes.
So you were in a sense forcefully taken out. So luckily nature and everything kind of took you out, so you didn't have to make a complete choice. Were you ever checked up and cleared after that?
I have clearance now.
So then what makes you not want to do the sport anymore?
No, I absolutely do. I absolutely do. I would love to fight again, and
anybody watching this, any promotions out there, he's a free agent.
Hey, the first time I walked in, I'm not a free agent, I'm still on the contract.
Oh, man. He's like Dave Chappelle, 7 years late to work. Chappelle's show probably coming back, you never know. Never know.
I like that. Me and Dave Chappelle. I walk into a place like this, I sit and have a conversation for 5 minutes with Conan, and I'm ready to start training camp again straight away. The things that have stopped me are, well, USADA, and not because of the drug testing, because aside from me smoking weed most days, I've never, you can test me whenever you like. Yeah. It's the convenience of me being on the road all the time and trying to make sure I'm checked in. And
which is really, really hard.
The most likely thing is I'm going to get disciplined because I'm not at the place they want me to be, because I'm always on the road. So that's a hurdle that I've got to get over, because I've got to do 4 months in a testing pool to fight again. The other thing as well is that outside of myself, I have a responsibility to the sport now. My responsibility to myself is not put to one side, but there's a bigger picture outside of myself. It's not about my career anymore. It's about, I work for MMA. I work for the sport, for the fighters. I want to build this sport and protect this sport. And I know that because I can speak, I can probably speak better than I can fight, to be honest. I feel like I'm so much more benefit to the sport outside of the octagon than I am inside. And I also, from the outside now, have seen how difficult it is for my family around me. You know, it's a very selfish thing to do, fighting, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because I think we all have to be selfish on some level. But like, you know, the turbulence that it causes for my family is something that I take far more seriously now than I did when I was actually fighting. I can see it in other people. You know, to see parents in corners is a real interesting thing for me. We've got Jack Shaw, who's just signed with the UFC, who's an absolute superstar. But I watch his dad shaky in his corner, and I can just see it, the wear on his face, the drain it has on his body, because he's in there with his son, but he can't do anything to help. And then, like, I remember watching Frank Mir's father in his corner when Brock Lesnar was on top of him, dropping elbows. And I know that. I've seen that in my dad's eyes. I've seen that in my mum's eyes. I know what my sister goes through when I fight. So that's a struggle for me. And I'm not saying that would stop me fighting, because they understand that it's who I am. But if I did fight again, that is something that I'd certainly have to take that with me into the octagon. I'm carrying that with me as well. You know, it's far less of a selfish journey for me now.
Yeah, it's crazy that, again, now you're cleared to fight, but there's so many reasons now behind it that because I can doesn't mean I should. And again, I've had fighters before I even turned professional. Alex Soto told me a story where he fought, I can't remember, something McDonald, I can't remember, but he was a big bantamweight coming in, and he ended up getting, Michael McDonald, and he ended up getting knocked out, I think, in his UFC debut. And my friend Alex Soto woke up and immediately goes, I'm looking for my wife, because I know she is terrified. She's never seen an MMA fight. She's never been to a UFC event. So after the fight, she's freaking out, like, I don't want you to do this anymore. He's like, this is my job. You know, the Miguel Cotto thing, the video online where his wife is like, I don't want you to do this anymore. He's like, what am I going to do? This is all I know. I think it's a really, really huge statement. It's a bad thing to show, but it's a true thing to put out there. And that's why I do my series as well. But you're saying it messes up your relationships, it messes up this. You're bringing fear into other people's lives, even though you're enjoying it. You know, so it's how selfish can you be for how long? You know, now you're at a point to where I believe you're pretty successful now with being a sports analyst, commentator, and so many things with the UFC, and you have your own series like this. It's a huge thing. But what advice would you give fighters coming up that might not be as fortunate later on in their career, where something happens where they're forcefully put out, or let's just say they're just not that good at the sport? They put all their money into this, but it's just not going anywhere. What's next? Because I always, like, for me, since I was young moving up, besides my huge amateur record, I told people I had my education. My degree was in kinesiology. So if I, for example, flunk out of MMA, if I just am not that good, or so happen I fall, or EKG test tells me, which I've actually failed every single EKG test, which is really bad. I don't know why I'm still fighting, but it's actually true. I failed every single EKG test. My heart's never had a regular beat. But so it happens that a doctor tells me tomorrow I can't fight anymore. What am I going to do? For me, I have my degree. But most people don't go to school. Fighting's a poor man's sport. At least I say in my neighborhood. We have a boxing team called TBT, not TMT, the money team. We're the broke team. And it's literally like we have a wall of death. It gets real dark. But it's one of those things that most of those guys are literally fighting to get out of the neighborhood. I always say I'm another Shorty that just made it out. If I can do it, you can do it too. So what advice do you give someone coming up to where they're putting all the money in this bank, but now they're just going bankrupt? So what would you recommend people to do after? You know, so like moving up now. And I know it's a hard question. Yeah, it can go many ways.
Yeah, it is, because I mean the thing is with sport, it's like we're not supposed to all be successful in sport. Like the idea of sport is to chase a goal. You know, and I think that a lot of fighters, they look past the value in the chase, and they only see the value in the goal. And ultimately, I mean, from from a sporting perspective, yes, you can identify there's a goal. It's got a gold belt. You're the champion. You're the number one. But as a martial artist, which I think a lot of people in the sport now have lost touch with, as a martial artist, like, it's the journey that's the value, you know? And if you're competitive right now, you're on that journey. When you stop being competitive, that journey doesn't come to an end. You know, there are still lessons, there's still things that you can pass on, even if it's just to your children. There are still lessons and things that you can pass on that will shape that person, that character. I mean, I think the most important thing for anybody to do is to try and have a positive impact on somebody else.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter what that is. It doesn't matter whether you work in a record shop and you go to a kid, hey, listen to this. This is a really good song. This is going to change your life. Or a particular book that you've read. Or, you know, having a conversation with somebody can be really valuable. Everyone's got a niche, and I feel like people get so blinded by the fact that they're trying to become what they want to become. They lose sight of what they actually are.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is, I mean, as much as I wanted to be a UFC champion, as much as I wanted to be the best welterweight in the world, at that time, it wasn't meant to be. You know, you look at the guys in my division. I mean, I got to number 4 at the time in my division. But then I look at the guys around me. I mean, I was in a division with Thiago Alves, with John Fitch, with Koscheck, with Mike Swick, I mean, these guys were monsters. Like, you could have thrown us all in an octagon. At any point, I could have been knocked out amongst any of those guys. And
that's the crazy thing about the sport is you can be the best in the world and still happen to take one shot.
Yeah. Like, you know, I think you've got to be honest with yourself, and I think that you've got to be honest with yourself throughout your career. And I don't think there's anything wrong with going, this is where I'm at right now. This is what I'm getting out of the sport right now. I don't think I'm going to get a great deal further, so how else can I go? Mark Goddard's a good example, you know, referee Mark Goddard. Like, he was a heavyweight fighter, and he had fights, and he was up and down. And there was a point he realized, as much as he wants to be a champion, his role is to be an official, you know. And you look at the impact that he's had now. Had he been a heavyweight contender, he wouldn't have had any impact on the sport necessarily. But as a referee, he's one of the best in the world. I mean, he's refereed me 14 times, and I've never felt as safe in the octagon as I have when Mark Goddard's refereeing. And to me, that's far more valuable to everybody than for him to have a successful career.
He's lost me money. No, just kidding. He didn't stop any fights too early. It's really nice that you bring that up, because when I do speeches at schools, I always say, like, guys, who wants to be a professional athlete? Because that's technically what I am. I'm not NFL, I'm not MLB, but the stats to make it that far are ridiculous. I mean, Greg Hardy's here, and he was in the NFL, and then eventually he got released and decided to do MMA. Even though you make it doesn't mean it's going to last forever. Me, 2 fights in the UFC lasted technically 2 months, 2 fights. It lasted 6 months of my contract, and then I was done. I was like, oh, wow, that was great, you know, and I had a horrible experience. So what I tell people, like you're saying, enjoy the journey. The goal is amazing, but sadly, you might not make it to the goal. But if you do nothing, you don't stay the same. Time keeps on going, so you end up being backtracked. But if you keep on going, you might not make the goal, but you're going to be somewhere in between, and that's the journey that really matters most. Life is too short. Again, I know time's flying for you. Time is definitely flying for me. Plus, I get punched in the face a lot, so I keep on forgetting a lot. It's really, really bad. I get into so many arguments because I'm like, I said this. I'm like, no, you didn't. I'm like, oh, man. So it gets really, really bad. But that's what I tell people is really, again, have a goal. Whether even in Spartan, have a goal, do your thing. Will you accomplish it? No, but it doesn't mean you might not get to some certain point to where, again, for you, your goal was here, but somehow you divert into a different path. You're still integrated into the same goal in a sense. It's just going into a different path, and I think that's amazing to really hear from somebody else that is more of a veteran, it's been through it all, and is now successful doing something else, but in still a sport that he loves, and obviously keeping his family happy where he's not getting punched or anything in the face. So that's definitely a good thing. I'm still trying to find that leeway. But it's for a fun question. If you were to come back, who is somebody you'd like to fight?
Well, I mean, I have certain criteria which the person would have to meet.
I swear, if you call out CM Punk, I'm done. I'm walking out.
He is a good example of the opposite end of the spectrum.
Okay.
I want someone that's a veteran. You know, someone that I don't want to have to say, hey, I'm fighting such and such, and everyone's like, oh, who's that? Is he good? You know, I want to be able to go, this is the guy I'm fighting, and everyone's like, oh, that's a good fight. That's a really good fight. I want someone that's established in their game, that's had 30 fights, 40 fights, that, you know, they know they're a veteran of the game. That's who I would like to fight, and someone that's not someone that if I beat them is not going to affect the rankings. Because I always say this, I work for MMA, then I work for the UFC. That's my order. And at no point do I want to tread on anybody's toes and start diverting any paths of any younger fighters, because my job is to aid the sport, is to benefit the sport and to continue building the sport now. So I've identified that it's a very selfish thing for me to step in and fight again. For me, selfish for my family, selfish for the sport, for everything. That would be one more for me. But there are certain things that I can do to avoid having a very negative impact, and that would be to then step in there and derail somebody else's career.
No.
That's why I would like someone that's towards the end of their career, that's kind of had a run or two, and they're on the way out. And 55, 170. I mean, I walk around. I'm about 184 now.
I'm close to that too.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I got yelled at the other
so
day.
I'm cutting to flyweight.
Yeah,
is that what you said?
You should do it. You should do it.
Maybe I'm a bantamweight.
I like how you gave the safest answer possible and didn't call out.
Who would you like to see me fight?
Oh, look at that.
Who would you like to see me fight?
It's like
fun question.
Everyone's called out Khabib, right? But that's damn. I hate this role reversal. I don't like this. It's for me. I've seen you fight some of the greats already, and I'm trying to think of somebody that would be a little nostalgic. Somebody already, I wouldn't say 100% past their prime, but around your age, who's been a UFC vet. Diego Sanchez would be a great fighter, who's done both weight classes, who's always put on a performance, who's literally a very, very crazy man. The nicest guy in the world, but also very, very crazy. And I think it'd be a fun fight. I don't know if you fought him already before.
I haven't, but when I mentioned that to people in amongst the UFC, and I won't mention any names, but that was one of the names they got very excited about. Yeah, Sanchez would be a really fun one for sure. And the other thing as well is, like, I had a few other names thrown at me, the likes of, and I was talking at about 55 at the time, and it was like, Jim Miller, Joe Lozon, and I have no desire to punch those guys.
Yeah.
I have no desire to punch those guys. I'm past that stage in my career where I just want to fight everybody, There are some guys like Diego Sanchez. Me and him have always had been a bit of animosity between the two, so that would be an easy fight to get up for.
Yeah.
The trash talking would be a lot of fun, as would a Diaz or a Cowboy or someone like that. Someone that's a good level of their game, that got that respect, that are just not going to be too concerned about.
I just want to say, if the UFC does make this fight happen, I'm automatically getting 20%. I hype this up, set it up. I'm done. That's it. But I appreciate your time, man. Again, you're trying to. I'm trying to be like you when it comes to being a sports analyst, a commentator. You do break things down to a science, which I really enjoy. Instead of just saying this guy's stronger, he's bigger, he's this, is that. That doesn't make any sense. But why is he stronger? Why is this John Jones? Why is he the most dominant guy in the world, even though this guy is much more muscular, this guy does this guy does that? So I like how you break them down to a science, and it's a really informative, educational thing, and I think that's awesome. I appreciate that. I appreciate the time. And guys, if you do want to follow me, social media, Jose Shorty Torres on Instagram, and again, follow my series Inside Team Shorty on YouTube. I do talk about the inside, again, the behind the scenes reality and truth MMA, where I try to dig deep and see why things are happening, get people to better understand what's coming next. Again, like you, when you explain fights and why you believe someone might have the upper hand, I do the same thing when it comes to the mental game.
Awesome, man. It's been great talking to you, and I am really excited to see your career progress from this point onwards. Braver looking after you. It's a great promotion. You'll be over in the UK soon. You've got to be commentating or something as well.
I'm hoping.
You speak so well. You've got a great mind for the sport, so it doesn't matter where you go and what you do. You'll be a success. So thank you, man, very much for your time as well, man. It's been an honor spending time with you.
Awesome, man.